Hello there. So I am now going to continue with the analysis of the information that came forward in response to questions that I asked the nine based on a social media post. It was actually just a tweet, to be honest, and that one tweet has turned into this series of New Earth teachings by analysing that one tweet, which was literally a couple of sentences. So the first video in this series is Kali Yuga, Into the Photon Belt, Atlantis Diamond Codes. If you watch that video right at the beginning, the responses to the questions are presented in two transmissions from the nine. The first one is Into the Photon Belt. The second one is Manifesting Paradise. The second video in the series is 4D domains, silver cores, and the disintegration of the negative elite worlds. And the third video in this series of New Earth teachings is Life in Fourth Density, Future Earth Geology, and the Neon Kingdoms. So I'm going to continue with the analysis here. And the next part is, it is so very important, it is indeed crucial that you remain focused upon the now moment, the 0 point, which is your current home galactically, for you are within the photon belt field. So what the nine are meaning is, in space-time, our current home, as in the space our planet is within, so this is in space-time and time-space, as in this is in the physical space of the universe, and also the abstract time of the universe. I mean, in the truth of reality, time and space are one place. And when you go to the utmost truth from source consciousness, there is only one space and only one time, so that there isn't any space, as in going out further in the true reality, only in the expression of third density, and that changes in fourth density and through the densities, it will change. And when you get up into the higher densities, you are fully aware that there is only one space and only one time. So time isn't linear. So space isn't spatial and time isn't linear in the truer realities and the higher realities, but in this illusory reality, which is natural, a natural organic illusory reality, we do experience space and time. And there are also hijacked realities as well, which are not natural, which are created within fourth dimensional domains, which is where the service to self factions throughout the different levels. So we've got deep state, we've got service to self cabal, and then we've got the non-physical entities that work with them. They use fourth dimensional domains to create an inverted matrix trapping system. That's all been explained in the previous videos. So it's crucial, it's important, but it's crucial that you remain focused upon the now moment. So we don't want to project too much into the future. We see the future, we see the potentials, we create the potentials. We see the past, we see where we've come from, we understand about the different timelines, the Mandela effect, both organic and hijacked. We understand all these different things to do with time, but we focus on the now moment. The reason for this is it is the only place there is within that higher reality system. So this now moment is the 0 point, which is your current home galactically. So galactically, if you want to perceive that from a third dimensional perspective, galactically, you are within the photon belt field, which I've explained in the previous videos in this series. I've explained what the photon belt field is and why it's so important and what it does and how we connect to it. If you project yourself into the glorious future that awaits, then you are forever waiting and seeing your present now point as less than. So if you project yourself constantly into the future, and what I mean by that is you're focusing on it all the time. New Earth, when will we get there? When will the cabal fall? When will this planet be free? When will we have a better system here or there? When will we have a new financial system? When will we have a new educational structure? Always looking to the future. Now, we need to do that to a point in order to be able to manifest it and know where we're going. But if we're living there all the time and ignoring the present, then what we actually manifest for ourselves is forever waiting. When will this be here? How much longer? How much longer do we wait for the takedown of the cabal and all these arrests and the freeing of the children and the new earth reality and freedom and communities and organic food? And when? And when we're there and in that consciousness, we're forever waiting. We're forever waiting. We're forever waiting. Then when we come back to the now moment and we look around and see what's going on, that is less than the future. Now, from a realistic point of view, third dimensionally, that's true. The future is better than the present on a full third dimensional expression. When looking spiritually, it is never that. There's always a gift in every moment, regardless of what's going on, even if it feels like oppression, even if it feels like New World Order. So that future that you are continually looking at and experiencing as so much better than the future, as in, you know, we need to get away from this because I want that, you will experience your present now point as less than, which, as I said, from a logical third dimensional point of view, that's correct. But the 9 go on to say, in order to manifest paradise Eden, ascended reality, your now time must be a match to it and not less than. Now, how on earth do we do that? If, as I've said, looking logically, our reality now in September 2020 is not very nice, and looking forward into the future, into perhaps 2034 or whatever, or 2027 or wherever we want to go, that looks amazing. It looks beautiful. It looks fantastic. So why would we even try to create a match when we're going into something better? So what the 9 are talking about here is to do with manifestation. If your now time is not a match, now if you draw that diamond core energy into your current reality will be a match to that diamond energy. And every starseed existing in 5th dimensional consciousness within balance and awareness will be holding that diamond core frequency, that diamond pulse in their current reality. They will be experiencing the new earth now and finding the joy and the bliss and the connection and the togetherness and the unity and the service and the compassion, the laughter. They will be finding that because it is available. It's been pushed to the back of reality. It's in the shadows, if you will, and what's out in the fore is the hijacking. You go out and it's masks and hand sanitizer and temperature checks and track and trace and, you know, all of these draconian measures. But within that, there is still synchronicity. There is still the heart-centered higher reality that comes from the higher self aspect, pulsing back from that diamond core. Luck and joy and hope, they're all still there. The manifestations of those 3 things, luck, joy, hope, bliss, compassion, love, unconditional love, they're all still there. And we can find them. And if we line up with synchronicity, we won't necessarily come into the full force of those draconian measures. What we will then be is an observer. We will be witnessing everything that's going on and not necessarily partaking in it. We will have to witness it because people we love may be caught up within it and we can assist them. We can find a way to not be caught up within it, but still be experiencing it in a 3rd dimensional reality. And the way to do that is to be multidimensional, to see the other dimensions at the same time, because they're not hijacked. The 4th dimension is, but that's disintegrating. They're losing their hold on the 4th dimension, and therefore they're losing their hold on the 3rd dimension as well. But when you get into 5th dimensional consciousness, there's no hijacking there or beyond. So your current home galactically, you are within the photon belt. If you project yourself into the glorious future that awaits, then you are forever waiting and seeing your present now point as less than. In order to manifest paradise, Eden, ascended reality, your now time must be a match to it and not less than. And you can ensure that your current now time reality is a match to that diamond core configuration. That's joy, bliss, happiness, compassion, love, connectivity, creativity, all of those things. You can find this. The energy of that is available for all, but it does take a mindset. It does take a change in consciousness. The 9 then go on to say there will be many other changes geologically. So the question was about geological changes in New Earth. As we go forward in New Earth, there will be many other changes geologically, for your land is becoming that of a 4th density planetary system rather than 3rd density. So what that means is the laws of physics are actually changing. They're changing from this extreme polarity, this extreme gravitational structure, and what we can actually see physically within our galactic space and our ether and environment. It is subject to laws of physics specific to the 3rd density. When we change into 4th density, those laws of physics change because we change. So that's what's happening. I mean, we can look at this as a consciousness, as in we're in 3rd dimensional consciousness, we're moving through 4th dimensional consciousness and landing in 5th dimensional consciousness. That's the consciousness that we need to create this. But this consciousness sets as a geometric pre-matter template, like a structure that sits as a grid that the 3rd dimension reacts to, molds itself to. So that 5th dimensional consciousness will fall into 4th density. And density is this is how the 9 teach me. People may use density and dimension interchangeably, and they may see 4th density as what I see as the 4th dimension and vice versa. But from the model the 9 teach me, the 9 show me, 4th density is a geological presentation. And dimension is a consciousness. They are, of course, 2 sides of the same coin and absolutely intertwined. You will have the ability to create your own landscape. For the 4th density experience is that which we call a Genesis project. I have discussed this in the previous video. I talked about Genesis being connected to Genius and the Genesis codes, how they're connected to the photon belt, and how we will be creating our own landscape like you do in Dreamtime. So go back to the last video for information on that aspect, which I've already analyzed. Those who arrive in balance within this geological Earth Gaia system will be the creators and hold the Genesis project at their fingertips. So I've discussed what it means to be a creator, logos, God being, and that's what we're moving into, but that's, you know, thousands of years in forward moving time, but that we hold that now. We hold the seed points to that as in manifestation, but we also hold that within us now, within the laws of physics, within the 3rd dimension. That's manifested in the way that we can within the density that we exist within. And as the density changes, our ability to experience this Genesis project genius codes will change in alignment with the landscape, because the landscape and the energetics within the Stargate systems of the land, as in the dragon lines, the ley lines, they are in perfect match to our own DNA system and our meridians, because the crystal river runs through the land and through the human being. And that crystal river is known as the Schumann Resonance. The Schumann Resonance runs through the human meridian system and the DNA and the brain configuration, as well as through the ley lines of the land. So those who arrive in balance within this geological Earth Gaia system will be the creators and hold the Genesis project at their fingertips. And yes, that's a metaphor. And the 9 go on to say, we speak in much metaphor, for this is what activates you it is also your sanctuary, your immunity, and your shield. So what do the 9 mean by that? Well, metaphor is an activation. Metaphor conjures up frequency through image, through picture, through word, and that translates from the right hemisphere of the brain into the left hemisphere of the brain and balances the two, moves into the heart, the entire chakra system. Those metaphors are flame letter codes, fire codes. Fire letter codes. This is the language of light cosmic alphabet, and this activates you within as you respond to it because it's frequency. So that's why it's an activation. It's also your sanctuary. Metaphor is your sanctuary, especially in the middle of an attempted planetary takeover and a lockdown, or the threat of some kind of virus or illness, regardless of whether it's real or not, makes no difference. That the fear and the panic is what creates the threat to you. Metaphor can be that which you build your inner world from. So you create an architectural design within your inner world, which is your 5th dimensional reality consciousness, that aligns with that diamond core convergence, that diamond pulse. This is your crystal palace within. This is your hyperspace reality. Now that is metaphor, and it's your sanctuary, because if you react to the inner worlds rather than the outer worlds, you are actually allowing your reaction to be part of your own sovereignty rather than controlling you. So you can react to your inner worlds, which are beautiful and peaceful, beautiful landscapes, wonderful animals, birds, whatever you choose, music, whatever you choose within that landscape. But you don't ignore the 3rd dimension. I mean, you wouldn't have somebody stood in front of you saying, I really need your help, I'm hurt, and you're busy visualizing rainbows and unicorns. That's Fluffy Bunny, off the planet, space cadet, totally ungrounded way of thinking, and that's shooting yourself off into 11th dimensional consciousness, if you will, or maybe not quite that high, with no grounding. And that makes you lose your 3rd dimensional focus. You become ungrounded, and that's a sort of a stepping stone into a fragmentation of mind and insanity and disassociation. So you wouldn't do that. If somebody's in front of you saying, I'm hurt, your inner worlds will take a backseat. Oh, you're hurt. Can I help you? What can I do? Blah, blah, blah. You will attend to your 3rd dimensional situation, but you don't have to react to it, as in falling apart because this person is hurt and not being able to help them because you're so busy being devastated. There are times when that is natural. If it's a loved one that's seriously hurt, of course, you wouldn't. There's not many people that would be able to stay within that balanced state when that's occurring. But even then, even if you are falling apart emotionally in grief, you can still act to assist in that moment in the best possible way, and then think about the emotions afterwards. There are ways to navigate each situation. Nobody is perfect in each situation. Every starseed will make mistakes and will look back and think, oh, I could have handled that differently, and I wish that I had. That's going to happen to all starseeds. But ultimately, if you construct an inner reality, an architectural hyperspace with the crystal palace, this is a sanctuary for you, and you can react to it. So rather than reacting to what you've just seen on mainstream news or just seen on social media, you can take yourself to the sanctuary of that inner world, that hyperspace crystal palace, react to the beauty there, and then come back to mainstream media and come back to social media and attend to what you've just heard and analyze it and deal with it. This is you witnessing or observing the situation rather than immersing yourself in it, seeing something on social media and thinking, oh no, and falling apart. It ruins your whole day. You end up crying or getting stressed and annoyed with the rest of your family. This is understandable, and 3rd dimensionally anchored people will be doing this all around you. So as a starseed, as a planetary conduit and a planetary healer, It's your role to be the calm within the storm. It's your role to be within the eye of the storm and be, if you will, the spiritual first responder. That is your role as a planetary healer. And then as a planetary conduit or messenger, it would be to bring forward information, which is what I am doing. But we have to live this as well. We can't just sit in front of our computers and look like we've got it all, you know, in balance and sussed out. We have to live it, and that's where we move into the experience of it. So that's why metaphor is your sanctuary. Now, metaphor is your immunity. That's because it's a flame letter, and you choose what you bring into your system. So you don't go into these fourth dimensional trapping systems, these 4D domains of all of these different consciousness traps, like the Death Star, crucifixion, illusion that people can be hijacked by, as I spoke about in the last video. You can go to your crystal palace. You can have rabbits running through your field. You can have unicorns and winged horses and butterflies and trees. And you can actually meet with a wizard or a sage and sit down and have conversations. And you can, well, you can do anything because you're a creator of that reality. It's your hyperspace reality. It's your 4D domain, if you wish to use the fourth dimension. But most starseeds will be, this will be a fifth dimensional consciousness structure, which is superimposed across the whole of the fifth dimension. It isn't necessarily a domain or a section. It's the fifth dimension that you created. The fifth dimension is an infinite structure and will mold to the presentation of every starseed or truth seeking individual that connects there. I spoke about this in the second video that I did in this series. So it's your immunity. It makes you immune from all these trapping systems, and that will translate into the third dimension. So it gives you immunity to diseases and viruses. It gives you immunity from having to do things that are outside of your sovereignty, like wearing a mask, using hand sanitizer, having your temperature checked, going to places that you don't want to go to, having vaccines. That's immunity towards the third dimensional control, the draconian laws that are coming in. You can find immunity, and metaphor holds that. And it's your shield. It shields you. That is your protection. The word shield is more in alignment rather than protection, because the shield is that which covers you, and the shield prevents these bullets, attacks, arrows, psychic negative forces from coming to you. Metaphor is your shield. This works in another way as well. If you speak in metaphor when you deliver truth, it's your shield. You aren't going to be, I'll say you aren't, it's much less likely that you will be censored on social media if you're using metaphor. Yes, people might not understand your metaphor, but guaranteed others will. And so metaphor is a way of communicating safely during a hijacked time period. So it's sanctuary, immunity, and shield. We are the White Wing Collective Consciousness of Nine. So that was the end of that particular response to the question I asked about the US election and about the geological changes that we will go through as we approach this new Earth reality. And as I said in the last video, I did actually ask further questions regarding the US election. So this is what I asked the Nine. Dear Nine, I always felt that the US election result changed the timeline, and because of this, the Donald Trump election win was the pathway into the Ascension timeline. Yet you are saying that the US election is an outcome of the Ascension timeline, Diamond Core Convergence, rather than the creation of it. Does this then mean that Donald Trump winning the election is an inevitability? And if not, does it mean that if the Democrat candidate wins, then our reality will revert back to an iron core and thus a new world order timeline? So this is what I asked the Nine, and I'm just going to check that this is still recording. Yes, it is. Great. So here is the nine's response.
Indeed, your US selection result changes timelines and creates realities just as every decision you make or choice you take does the same. A timeline or probability field is not the same as a multi-density vortex, convergence point, or inevitability, which is a core point, as in a galactic central zone into a multiple Stargate system. A timeline change through an event is a timeline jump, or in certain cases a mini convergence point, a core structure or node point in and of itself, but not the full central zone of the multiple Stargate system. The presidential election win by the person you mentioned is in alignment with the Ascension timeline, Diamond Core Convergence, not the core creation of it. However, it would indeed create a direct trajectory into it. The overall frequency of the Diamond Pulse creates matching aligned realities to manifest upon your planet and within your dimensional experience due to what you may know as cymatics. The Diamond Pulse is a frequency vibration pulse, and therefore, if you will, a sound, a note. This is a geometric configuration. The physical reality, therefore, must match that geometric configuration. From this perspective, a presidential election result would have to match that frequency, that configuration. However, the closest match to a Diamond Core Convergence would be a round table governance rather than a hierarchical pyramidal structure of governance. And this is where you are indeed heading. Therefore, any current presidential or governmental system on your planet will thrive if it holds round table governance configuration, and shall not sustain if it holds pyramidal hierarchical structure. The Service to Self factions are aware of geometric manifestations, despite their information coming from, shall we say, a distorted light source. They therefore hijack the natural aligned response to the geometry by creating their own artificial match to that geometry. Therefore, the presidential election result regarding the person you mention cannot be an inevitability, for it is not a core convergence point. However, it stands as the highest probability due to the vibrational match with the Diamond Core Convergence Pulse. The result of the election presenting as the lower probability of the Service to Self candidate win will be in direct proportion to the level of hijacking and the ability to implement the hijack. Should this lower probability occur, then this does not mean an iron core convergence will thus manifest. The Diamond Core Pulse would still remain in place as the overall pulse. The timeline would shift, however, yet all geometries would revert back into alignment with the Diamond Core Pulse. This would simply create a higher illusion of said planetary takeover, which would still remain at the level of attempt rather than actual. The probability of manifesting a low number of silver cores within the overall diamond configuration would increase slightly, yet all manifestations would remain in alignment with the Diamond Core Convergence. At the current now point nexus, this eventuality is the lower probability outcome. We are the white-winged collective consciousness of 9.
So that's what the 9 said about this question. That was their response. So I'm going to now move into an analysis of what they said, and hopefully get through that in one video, but it looks as though it may be 2 videos depending on what needs to be said. So the 9 said, indeed, your US election result changes timelines. So that's a given. The result of the election, like the result of any choice, or, you know, if you've got 2 jobs in front of you, job A and job B, whichever job you choose will change your timeline. Relationships, I want to have a relationship with this person or this person. The person you choose to have a relationship with, or the person that you end up having a relationship with, will change the timeline. So yes, the US election result will change a timeline. So indeed, your US election result changes timelines and creates realities, just as every decision you make or choice you take does the same. A timeline, or probability field, is not the same as a multidensity vortex, convergence point, or inevitability, which is a core point, as in a galactic central zone into a multiple Stargate system. So what the 9 is saying is, a timeline is a choice between option A, option B, option C, D, E, but it's a choice that one can compartmentalize as separate choices, and you can see them. So if it's a job, one job is being a nurse, the other one is being an actor, the other one is being a teacher. So we can see the differences very clearly between these choices. They're compartmentalized individual choices. That's a timeline. And a probability field is a field of timelines, showing the probability of you being an actor is much higher than the probability of you being a teacher, but the probability of you being a teacher is higher than the probability of you being a nurse. Yeah, I'm actually looking at my own probability fields here from the past, not really now, but yeah, so that is showing you the different probability levels within this overall probability field. So these timelines exist within a probability field, but a multi-density vortex convergence point is multiple timelines all crisscrossing over one another, aligning together in a sort of spiral point, a vortex spiral point. So it's very difficult to see the individual. You can pick them out, but really it's like, if you imagine the timelines are still. So if you're looking at these jobs, nurse, actor, teacher, nurse, actor, teacher, you can see them, the timelines are still. So I can just pick nurse, actor, teacher, easy to see. In the convergence point multi-density vortex, it's spinning, spiraling. So it's like, oh, I can't see all these things. But you can sort of grab something. What's this? Oh, it's a nurse. And grab something. Oh, it's an actor. You can, I'm speaking on analysis in a clairvoyant psychic way, how to read the convergence point or multi-density vortex. So you can do it, but it's much more difficult because it's spinning, it's moving, and it is a complete holographic convergence of every timeline in one point, or inevitability. The 9 say multi-density vortex convergence point or inevitability. So that is an inevitability because there's no separate timelines anymore. There's no individualized timelines. They've all come together, meaning that in every timeline, it all comes together into this convergence, meaning that's an inevitability. But when it's a multi-density vortex, it's like, well, what's the inevitability? What is that inevitability? We know what the inevitability is as a frequency. This one we're looking at is a diamond core. But how does that manifest? There's all these different potentials spinning around in this vortex as a potential match to the diamond core. That's why it's so difficult for a psychic or clairvoyant to actually see this when they're reading, because when they're doing readings, especially with something like tarot cards, you often still see single tracked timelines. It's much more difficult to actually get into the convergence and look at it and see what it is. You can, but it's not so easy. So a planetary psychic, a planetary clairvoyant is somebody who would be working with these grid structures. They would be sort of a galactic channel, I guess, a galactic clairvoyant. I suppose that's what I must be. It sounds pretty posh, but anyway. A timeline or probability field is not the same as a multi-density vortex, convergence point, or inevitability, which is a core point. So the inevitability is the core of the convergence. Well, there is no core in a timeline. A timeline is just a forward moving or backward moving or sideways moving, although that's not exactly a timeline. That's jumping from one timeline to another. So a timeline would go forwards or backwards in time. When you are looking at a timeline in a linear sense, it's just a track, because it's just about future past. That's it, future past. That's not the convergence. The convergence is all of it in one, and it's quantum. It's a quantum system rather than a single monotracked system. So it's quantum and it's galactic, as opposed to mono, single, individual, and planetary, so that they are different. And the nine go on to say that this core point is a galactic central zone into a multiple Stargate system. So that's what you're looking at. Timelines aren't multiple because they are singular. They're multiple when they're stood next to one another, but that's quantum. That's a quantum convergence expression of several timelines as individual choices, whereas a multiple Stargate system would be the convergence of all of the timelines, but not just the timelines in a linear sense. These would be the timelines in a quantum sense. It would be all the different choices you could have made, all in one convergence. It's the whole of reality converging together. It's a huge, huge point, which is why when it occurs, the reset is the reset of an age. As I've spoken before, we had Atlantis and Lemuria, and now we have now. And each time that the ages have moved from one to the other, there's been this move into the photon belt, the creation of the new age, and then you've moved into that age, as in a time period, as in a period of time spanning thousands of years. So that's what a multiple Stargate system is. A timeline change through an event, such as the US election, or you getting a new job, or you going out for your birthday. A timeline change through an event is a timeline jump. So you jump from this timeline to this one, or in certain cases, a mini convergence point, a core structure or node point. So in some cases, say you get a job and that job is for you to be a galactic channel rather than an actor, a nurse, or a teacher. You being a galactic channel is actually in all timelines, and no matter what path you take, whether you start off being a nurse, an actor, a teacher, whatever, you will all converge into being a galactic channel, because that's your destiny. So it's in all timelines. So it sits as the core in the center of this mini convergence point. That's an individual life's path, or it might be the life's path for a family or a group. But the path for a planet or a solar system, a galaxy, which is what's happening with us, is this convergence for the whole galaxy. So that's how big it is compared to our own individual convergence point. So a timeline change through an event is a timeline jump, or in certain cases, a mini convergence point, a core structure or node point in and of itself, but not the full central zone of the multiple Stargate system. So the full central zone of the multiple Stargate system is a galactic convergence of timelines for that galaxy, for that space-time sector, if you will, or for that planet. So it's much larger in scope than an individual's core convergence. The presidential election win by the person you mentioned, well, that was Donald Trump, but the 9 don't really talk about names of people very much. I can't think of many times when they have done that. The presidential election win by the person you mentioned is in alignment with the Ascension timeline. So if Donald Trump wins the election, this is in alignment with the Ascension timeline, diamond core convergence. But it's not the core creation of it. So Donald Trump winning isn't creating the diamond core. Donald Trump winning the election isn't creating the Ascension. That's happening regardless. The Ascension is happening. The diamond core of the convergence is happening. It's an inevitability. So Donald Trump winning the elections absolutely in alignment with it, but doesn't create it. It's happening anyway. However, it would indeed create a direct trajectory into it. So what that means is Donald Trump winning the election creates the timeline that's in alignment with, directly in alignment with that diamond core and that ascension. So it creates a direct trajectory into it. So what that would suggest is if he doesn't win, then it'll still happen, but it won't be a direct trajectory. It'll be going around the houses and all over the place. So if Donald Trump doesn't win the election, we aren't on a direct line, a direct trajectory. You know, it's kind of like, imagine you're getting on a plane and you want to go somewhere and that plane just flies from where you are straight there. That's a good flight. Or you catch a plane and it goes over here and it goes around there and then it stops somewhere else and it goes somewhere else. And that direct flight's going to take, I don't know, 3 hours, but the other flight could take sort of 3 weeks. This is kind of what the 9 are saying. So it doesn't matter regarding the Ascension and the Diamond Core Convergence for New Earth, whoever wins the election, that is still the future. But how long will it take to get there and how do we get there? It's going to be completely different if Donald Trump doesn't win the election, because it will be all over the place to get there, but we'll still get there. So that's basically what the 9 are saying. And I'm really glad they've answered this, because I did actually have this discussion with my husband. He actually asked this question in one of our Q&As, because he'd been saying for a long, long time, even if Donald Trump doesn't win, you know, it's not going to change anything. We're still going to go through Ascension. Whereas I was looking at the probability of if he doesn't win, it's going to be absolutely dreadful. But that's obviously because I was seeing the roundabout the houses way. And I didn't look forward and realize that Ascension process, that Diamond Core Convergence is going to happen regardless, whether there's an election or not, or who wins it in any country, any election, any political move of any kind, or anything within any system whatsoever. Nothing is going to stop this Ascension process and the Diamond Core Convergence and us coming into it as a planet and as humanity. It's an inevitability. So the presidential election win by the person you mentioned, Donald Trump, is in alignment with the Ascension timeline Diamond Core Convergence, but not the core creation of it. However, it would indeed create a direct trajectory into it. So your little two-hour plane journey, directly there, no stops. The overall frequency of the diamond pulse creates matching aligned realities to manifest upon your planet and within your dimensional experience due to what you may know as cymatics. And that word is spelt C-Y-M-A-T-I-C-S, cymatics. The diamond pulse is a frequency, vibration pulse, and therefore, if you will, a sound, a note. This is geometric configuration. The physical reality, therefore, must match that geometric configuration. So the overall frequency of the diamond pulse, so it's a pulse coming from the core of this convergence, and it holds a frequency. And the overall frequency of that pulse creates matching aligned realities to manifest upon this planet within the third dimension, within our dimensional experience, because of cymatics. And cymatics is the study of sound creating a pattern. So this is what's happening. This is what happens in creational reality. This diamond pulse creates matching aligned realities. So these realities match the frequency of that diamond pulse. The diamond pulse is a frequency vibration pulse, and therefore, if you will, a sound. So the nine talk of it as being a frequency, a vibration. The nine see it and know it as a frequency and a vibration. They don't hear it. They are merging with it, or they view it or are it, or from the perspective of them being me in the future, they see it and know it as a frequency, which is simply a movement, a pulse. But from the third dimensional point of view, we would know it as a sound. It's a sound, a pulse. And it's also a geometric configuration. So that sound is creating a geometry, a geometric structure. So this diamond core is a sound, and it's a geometric configuration. It's a diamond geometric configuration. It is a geometry. And at the center of this Stargate system, this convergence, this multi-density vortex, it has geometry at the center of it. The physical reality, therefore, must match that geometric configuration. That geometric configuration is that of the diamond, the crystalline, which is the full template of reality and creation. 12 strand into quantum 144,000 strand, which is what we are, and our reality has to match it. So our reality has to match light, love, unconditional love, compassion, the open heart, all of those wonderful higher vibrational emotional states that we know as an emotional state. An emotional state's a frequency, and it holds a geometry. So everything within that's in the path of that diamond pulse has to react to that. So the nine go on to say, from this perspective, a presidential election result would have to match that frequency, would have to match that configuration. So whoever wins any election result has to match the frequency. Now, that doesn't mean the person matches the frequency. It doesn't mean the person that wins is matching the frequency. It means the representation of that person, what they represent, and what timeline will be created by them winning. That is what will match the frequency. So what repercussions, what future ripples will be created by that win? So it's the action of that person winning that matches the configuration rather than the person. Now, it can be a person, it can be, but it doesn't have to be, which is why if a really awful, deep state member won the election, the ripples created from that would still have to match the diamond frequency, would have to. So it doesn't have to be the person themselves, but it's the action. So this is why the highest probability is for, obviously, Donald Trump to win, because the actions he's taking, the focus that he has, the desires that he has, the way that he feels about reality, about the US, about the world, about peace, is far more in alignment with the diamond frequency and that geometric pulse than any of the deep state individuals that are actually in alignment with the iron core. The only way that they could potentially have a presidential win would be if they presented a false screen within the candidate, or at least within the candidate's policies. So, if somebody was seen to match that diamond frequency in an illusory way, potentially that could allow them to match up with that diamond core. And that's the same thing that the nine have been talking about these little silver cores. So potentially the only person that could possibly have a presidential win against Donald Trump would perhaps be a female candidate, and she would have to be this silver core. So she would present as a strong woman, but really she would be a distorted, aggressive, controlling woman because she's working for the deep state. That'd be the only way they might be able to line up, but the probability of them creating a silver core is below 50%, and the highest probability is the individual that I asked about wins. So that's the highest probability that Donald Trump wins the election. That's the highest probability. But as the nine have taught me, they've taught me to present probability and to explain probability rather than say this will happen and this won't happen, because looking at the overall field, this is a high probability. It's matching up with that geometric pulse of the diamond. But it's good news, because even if a Democrat candidate did manage to win this election, if the election goes ahead, the election itself may not be in alignment with the diamond pulse, or maybe a delay in the election is more in alignment with the diamond pulse. You know, what will fall into place will be in a match with this new earth reality, with the ascension reality. But even if they did have an actual election and a Democrat won, which, as I said, is a low probability, that's what the nine is saying, even if that occurred, the repercussions are still in alignment with the diamond convergence. So something would happen. If a Democrat candidate won, something would happen. There'd be repercussions and reactions that will all shift and line up with the diamond core, with the ascension pathway. So it's a win-win situation, regardless, to be honest, which is why this election may never go ahead, and or in some way it will be different to how all the other elections have been. It's not looking clear-cut at all in the timelines. It looks very mysterious, like there's some huge revelation inside it. You know, and when I look at the US election, it's like there's an inside that presentation that is a US election. There's a huge mystery that's been hidden that will come out. But the most probable is that Donald Trump wins if it goes ahead. So from this perspective, a presidential election result would have to match that frequency, that configuration. However, the closest match to a diamond core convergence would be a round table governance rather than a hierarchical pyramidal structure of governance. And this is indeed where you are heading. So when you look at the diamond core, when it comes to government, it would be a round table. It wouldn't be one person. You wouldn't have a president and everybody underneath him. That's the structure anyway. I mean, we know that it isn't actually like that, because there's a hierarchy that has been in the past above the president, which isn't the case at the moment, because the current US president doesn't answer to that hierarchy and has a different structure, a more of a support structure. And it may well be that the Trump administration is actually more of a round table configuration. And if that's true, because I don't know how they conduct their sort of meetings, but if the Trump administration does work like a round table, then absolutely that will win, because that's the fullest alignment to the diamond core. But what the nine are actually saying is governance is to be done by the all, by the whole. There is no higher than, there is no lower than. It is not a pyramidal structure. That's the iron core. The future diamond core template pulse that we are receiving energetically is of a round table governance, not a hierarchical structure. So any business, this isn't just the US configuration for the election. This is a configuration for any business. Anything that's built on a hierarchical structure, a pyramidal structure, isn't going to sustain in this new energy. It must be a round table. It must be heartfelt. It must be genuine. It must be seeded with positive intent. Everything has to match that diamond. So the closest match to a diamond core convergence would be a round table governance rather than a hierarchical pyramidal structure of governance. And this is indeed where you are heading. So eventually there will come a point where governance is a round table. Might this mean that Donald Trump does something like ties up the American governmental system into a round table that doesn't have a president at all? Might he sort of sign some kind of bill or paperwork that sort of allows him to step down, but no other president can then follow, and the round table are those that are left? I mean, that matches the diamond. I don't know how this will manifest. I can see the frequencies and I know what the pulse is, and I can see the matches. But as I said, this convergence, it's not about one timeline. It's not about choice A and choice B. It's a convergence. And there are multiple ways that the manifestation can match that frequency. But that would match if there was a way that he could step down and leave the government structure without a president as a round table, where the people are involved as well, and actually stop the whole two-party politics. So there's no Democrats, there's no Republicans, there's just simply the round table. If there was a way that that could be done now, then that would fit this diamond core. Therefore, any current presidential or governmental system on your planet will thrive if it holds round table governance configuration, and shall not sustain if it holds pyramidical hierarchical structure. So I just explained that. The service to self factions are aware of geometric manifestations. So they're aware. The service to self factions, not the deep state, but the service to self factions are aware that manifestation occurs via geometry. And this is the reason why they put out symbolism and structure and numbers and films and image and music within Hollywood, and because they understand the geometric manifestations. The nine went on to say, despite their information coming from, shall we say, a distorted light source. So the information that they get comes from a distorted light source. It's still, in that respect, accurate information, as in geometric manifestations. So they understand that, they're aware of it. They therefore hijack the natural aligned response to the geometry by creating their own artificial match to that geometry. And this is a really huge one. I actually recently found out that when the service to self structure viewed the future timelines and saw the inevitability, one of the things they saw was the Great Awakening and huge protesting. And the protesting was specific to, let's say, younger members of our human society. When they saw this huge protest, this huge declaration of sovereignty amongst the people regarding the younger members of our society, they realized that that would be their downfall. So they didn't want that to manifest. So what they tried to do was align this false artificial match to the geometry. So the geometry is Great Awakening and protest and declaration of sovereignty amongst the people. So that's when they brought in the movement with the letters L, M, and B in it. They hijacked that movement and created a false protest declaration of sovereignty to try to cover or prevent the real one. I hope that's understood. I have had to speak somewhat in code there. And this would be the same thing with the presidential election. If they could find some candidate, it wouldn't be the one that they have now, but if they could find some candidate that would have to be female, that could stand as an artificial match to the diamond core, as in presenting policies or have some kind of personality that matches that diamond core, or some policy that does, then they could line up with it as a false screen artificial match, just like they did with the protests and the declaration of sovereignty amongst humanity. So it's a possible, but that's the same thing as the silver cores, and it's a below 50% probability, and getting lower as we go forward, so their probability is falling. Therefore, the presidential election result regarding the person you mention, that's Donald Trump, cannot be an inevitability, for it's not a core convergence point. So it is not inevitable that Donald Trump wins. It's not inevitable. The inevitability is inevitable. The convergence is inevitable. The Great Awakening is inevitable. And all of the matches of that are inevitable. The new Earth is inevitable, but him winning isn't inevitable. However, it stands as the highest probability due to the vibrational match with the diamond core convergence pulse. So this is what I mean about the 9 do not teach me yes and no, like this is going to happen and this will not happen. They don't teach me to speak through these set points or absolutes. Some psychic individuals will do, some channels, clairvoyants will interpret the messages in these absolutes, but the 9 have taught me very carefully to work with probability. As I explained in the last video, this is the nearest to truth of our reality, so it's not an inevitability. So you cannot say it's definitely going to happen, but it's the highest probability. So that is the 9's information on the presidential election, which I was so interested about personally, because I know how it does relate to the Ascension timeline, as I've said. The result of the election presenting as the lower probability of the service to self candidate win will be in direct proportion to the level of hijacking and the ability to implement the hijack. So what they're saying is, it's a lower probability that the service to self candidate wins. If the candidate wins, it will be in direct proportion to the level of hijacking. So how much can they hijack this consciousness? How can they hijack the election itself? How can they hijack the trajectory into the diamond core? And what about their ability to implement the hijack? So they could hijack the diamond core, but they need to implement it. They need to actually deliver it. So that what the 9 are saying here is, this is a really, really challenging path for the service to self factions, for the deep state. Really challenging. This is not a challenging path for the light and for the Trump administration, because it's an alignment. It's not challenging. It's kind of, you know, looking good. They would have to work, the deep state would have to work really, really hard and pull out all the stops relentlessly to do this, to get this win. Even then, even if they succeed, we've still got to look at all of the repercussions that will be lining up with the diamond core. So a win, a deep state win, will backfire on them. Basically, that's what the 9 is saying, and without using those words, a deep state win will backfire, and it's the lower probability. Should this lower probability occur, then this does not mean an iron core convergence will thus manifest. So even if the deep state get an election win, they won't manifest an iron core, meaning the New World Order. So even if they win the American presidency, the New World Order will not be implemented on a grand scale, because that would be the iron core. The diamond core pulse would still remain in place as the overall pulse. Why? Because the starseeds are still holding that frequency regardless of the election win. The starseeds are already in a state of enlightenment and ascension, and that's not going to stop. The diamond core pulse would still remain in place as the overall pulse. So that's really important. The timeline would shift, however. So the timeline would shift, yet all geometries would revert back into alignment with the diamond core pulse. So the timeline, instead of this direct trajectory into the diamond core, if Donald Trump wins, the deep state have a win, the timeline will then shift, but everything will then fall back into alignment with the diamond core, meaning that a deep state win would backfire on them because all of these other things will occur. This would simply create a higher illusion of said planetary takeover, which would still remain at the level of attempt rather than actual. So what the 9 is saying here is, it's going to, if the deep state have a win, what will happen on our planet is it will look like a New World Order takeover, a higher level of said illusion, of said planetary takeover. So this New World Order plan will continue to be implemented in a higher level. So potentially we're looking at mandatory vaccines, we'd be looking at much more draconian laws coming in. But this is what's so important for the starseeds, not to lose hope when this occurs, because if you're pinning all your hopes on the US election and you see that you know, the Donald Trump win is the way forward to ascension, and if he loses we're doomed, which is where I was actually myself a few weeks ago. It was my husband who said, I don't see that, and I'm like, you know, Donald Trump's got to win, it's the only way we'll get to the ascension. So I was sort of locked in my ego thinking, but I've obviously spoken to the 9 and I see that I can see what the 9 is saying here. And I am very grateful for their teachings on this so that I can move out of resistance, because I guess I was in resistance to Donald Trump, you know, not winning. And through the 9's information, I am now able to let go of that. And if we can do that as a group, as a collective, if we can let go of any resistance of Donald Trump not winning, then that will shoot him into the winning space, because resistance is what will prevent it. So we as starseeds really have a difficult role here, but we have all the tools needed to be able to implement this difficult role, and that's to release resistance to this outcome. So the iron core convergence won't manifest. The diamond core pulse would still remain in place as the overall pulse. The timeline would shift, but all geometries would revert back into alignment with the diamond core pulse. This would simply create a higher illusion of said planetary takeover, which would still remain at the level of attempt. So a deep state win is not going to take the attempted planetary takeover into actual planetary takeover. It's not going to create a new world order globally, because it's not an iron core convergence. So even a deep state win, why? Because it's too late already. Donald Trump and his administrations have already done so much stuff, and the starseeds are already holding that higher consciousness, and we're already in the photon belt drawing diamond core convergence frequency, which is an ascension timeline. So it's too late. The chances of implementing new world order are gone. That timeline's gone. That chance has gone. So we are still recording. This would simply create a higher illusion of said planetary takeover, which would still remain at the level of attempt rather than actual. The probability of manifesting a low number of silver cores within the overall diamond configuration would increase slightly. So if the deep state have a win, the best they can hope for is more of these silver cores, which isn't what they want, because it's not an iron core. Now what that would mean is smaller areas of the globe would be able to implement draconian strategies, or at least try to, through a over-the-top controlling feminine force, which is why I say if there is a deep state win, it would be female. It would have to be female. A male candidate probably wouldn't win. It's not in alignment with the silver core, let alone the diamond core. So the probability of manifesting a low number, so any new world order implementation is happening in small pockets. It's not global. It's not a global implementation. It's not a one world government, new world order. That is not in the future. because it can't manifest in a diamond core. It can in low probabilities. These are what the silver cores are. The probability of manifesting a low number of silver cores within the overall diamond configuration would increase slightly, so it may go to slightly above 50%. I mean, the 9 didn't give a probability. Yet all manifestations would remain in alignment with the diamond core convergence, so they would have to create false illusion all the time. They'd have to keep the hijacking going, keep the lie going, keep this false narrative going again and again. How can that happen when you have starseeds holding this fifth dimensional consciousness and the awakening occurring? The 9 have told me by the middle of 2022, the amount of spiritually awake individuals will more than double to what it is now. So more than double the amount of people awake spiritually. That's not including the truthers who are aware of the truth and haven't woken up spiritually. That's not including those individuals. It's just the spiritually aware individuals. So starseeds basically will have more than doubled by 2022. That's 2 years. How can they sustain this level of false narrative with that many starseeds? And this is only if the deep state have an election win. And that's just around the houses sort of delay, if you will. The higher probability is still that Donald Trump wins, which is a direct trajectory, direct and fast trajectory into the diamond core, which is why the US election is so important. And it's you know, highly important, highly significant, but it's not make or break, basically, which is what I was thinking a few weeks ago. According to the 9, it just means the delay is potentially longer to get to that new earth, and that the draconian laws would be rolled out more. And this is if the election even goes ahead. I mean, if Donald Trump does tie things up and move away, leaving a round table, that's even more in alignment with the diamond core. So that would be a peace agreement, a global peace agreement. That's what that would be. And that would have no room whatsoever for any draconian laws coming in, because a global peace agreement would mean that the ancient constitutions of each country would be reenacted, and that would mean Nessara and Gesera and all of the things that go with that. And that may occur anyway, even with the Trump win. But with a round table, in alignment with the diamond core, that would be a round table of white hats, and that's even in more alignment. So several potentials here which will manifest. We can't see that. No one can. The deep state don't know. Donald Trump doesn't know. The white hats don't know. The starseeds don't know. The clairvoyants don't know. We can see the potentials, but none of us can see what will actually happen. Even the 9 can only give me probability, because what they see is all of these potentials have already happened. They don't know which of those potentials we will manifest within our trajectory. They know which one we are most likely to manifest, but they can't say which one will actually manifest, because the 9 don't see that. They see what's already happened, and they can only see probabilities of what might happen, because they have to go back in time to view what I can view while I'm incarnated here, or what you can view while you're incarnated here. The probability of manifesting a low number of silver cores within the overall diamond configuration would increase slightly, yet all manifestations would remain in alignment with the diamond core convergence, which is wonderful news. At the current now point nexus, this eventuality is the lower probability outcome. So the deep state win is the lower probability outcome. So I then asked one more question, and this is what I asked. So does this mean the actual full New World Order timeline will not manifest on Earth, regardless of physical action, including a service to self election win? So I think I will end this video here, and I will do the next video for this series, and that should potentially be the last video of this series, in response to that question. So does this mean the actual full New World Order timeline will not manifest on Earth, regardless of physical action, including a service to self-election? When now the 9 have kind of answered this question, and I've just answered it, but the 9 did continue to explain this. So I'll bring that in the next video and present the 9's response in a transmission, and then go through an analysis of it. It's not that much, so that should be a shorter video. So there'll be one more video to come in this New Earth teaching series. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you're enjoying the information so far, and wishing you loads of love, and I will be back with the next video. Lots of love. Bye.
What is karma? Are there ways we can balance this and become karma-free? Is there a particular nutritional plan we should follow for ascension? Do we increase our karmic balance by eating certain foods? How can we utilize sex magic to work with karma and move through ascension? There are many lessons we can learn from the peoples of ancient Lemuria, a civilization that existed before our known history on planet Earth. As we move through an ascension process collectively, we move back into a new Lemuria, and we take with us all the knowledge we have accumulated since those times. In this transmission from the white-winged collective consciousness of 9, key codes are presented for cellular memory recall, linking the reader beyond Atlantis and into the harmonious frequencies of the first physical civilization on the Earth, Lemuria. The 9 respond to questions using the Lemurian way as a template. Key-coded responses trigger activations within the reader as they receive the wisdom codes, standing as rainbow warriors of Gaia, moving into abundance, alchemy, and Stargate ascension. This transmission is dear to my heart, and I'm so very pleased to announce my new book, Lessons from a Living Lemuria.